Hi everyone, welcome to another episode or discussion of the series called Inner Peace and Security. How do we find that? How do we connect with the tools to help us in our environment, whether we are secure in the sense that we are feeling good about our inner peace and we are feeling good about the security that we have? What are the tools that we can build to continue to manifest that energetic vibration? And if you are not at that place, how can you define these things to employ them in your daily routine or as part of your life and figure out what they mean for you? So in this discussion, this conversation, we are going to be focusing on love. And the thing I like to say to everyone is, first, ask what that means for you. What does it mean for you to love? What does it mean to love unconditionally? What does it mean to receive love, to give love? What are your expectations when it comes to love? What do you attach to love? What are the things that you trade off for love? And really recognize and be honest with you about those lists. And if you're unsure where to start with regards to the meaning of what love is, I like to start with the dictionary definition and just see what that says, and then see how the definition might relate to my life or might parallel some of the things that I believe and feel and understand about love or have experienced about love. Like, how have you experienced love in your life? How have you thought about love in your life? So all these things are going to be part of your journey of understanding what love is for you. So what do we need to know about love? I think for a lot of us, love can be attached to different things. Love can be attached to the way that we were brought up by our parents. Those are things that we have attached to. The definitions of love can be the relationship between our parents that we observed as children, and on a subconscious level we may not always be aware of how that relationship between our parents have affected us or have influenced us in the way that we pursue love or in the way that we receive love, give love to others. So that is something for you to consider. And the other thing is the innocence of love, the purification of love, right? How do we get into a state where love isn't dependent on X, Y, isn't dependent on things that somebody does for you? It's not an exchange of goods and services. How do you love people who are not blood related to you? How do you connect with people on a brotherly love? I think in Latin it's called agape or something like that. In that sense that you love someone because you know you're part of the human collective, or you love someone because you understand that you're part of the inhabitants of this planet. How do you make those connections that help you to see things not just as objects but as feeling and experiencing matter that's just having a different experience that you are, as more than just, I said before, as an object. And when we are able to see that, I think it helps us to purify the understanding of love, where it doesn't become convoluted or doesn't become warped or manifest in a way that is detrimental to us, where it doesn't manifest in a way where we feel obligated, we forget to put boundaries up, we allow ourselves to be put in situations that are not serving of us because we're looking for a certain type of love, or because we relate love with a certain type of action or consequence in our lives. So it's really important to kind of focus on the purity of love, because once you know what that is, you can distinguish from the other warped versions of love, or the other versions of love that are outside of your vibration, that are not serving your higher vibration. And by higher, I mean a vibration that is supportive and conducive of your growth, rather than putting you in a space where you're not fully experiencing something that is pure and joyful. And how does that improve our understanding of love, right? Getting, finding a way to purify, to cleanse. What does that mean, to purify and cleanse? What does that mean? It's an understanding of healing. It's an understanding of needing to cleanse and get rid of ideas, concepts, emotions, feelings, associations with love that are not in your best interest. And by getting through this space of purity, you start to see love in a whole different way. You start to experience what is called unconditional love. And I know sometimes people like to put their own definition. I remember I remember being told that I can't love you unconditionally, because that takes away from, because if you do something that I don't like, I can't love you unconditionally. So unconditional love is something that is like true altruism in a way, right? Where you don't do something for someone because you're being altruistic, but you gain something from it, whether that is you feeling proud of yourself or you feeling good about yourself. So that's been my argument about altruism. But I think unconditional love is something that can be attained because you don't put someone else's behavior on how you feel about them. You allow them to experience and express themselves as is, but you still love them. Like, the mother who loves her son even though her son may have like taken someone else's life. The person who loves someone else who's done something terribly wrong or who hasn't been the best person in society. I think it's not about judging that person for the things that they've done or their behavior, but understanding that they are part of the human collective. They are part of a living and breathing entity here. And so there is that. I would relate the unconditional love with the brotherly love, in a sense, just loving people because they exist with you and understanding them. And what unconditional love does too is it allows you to put boundaries. It allows you to set standards for yourself, where you're not going to put up with people's BS, where you're not going to be taken advantage of or get into a warped sense of love. Because if you have unconditional love for yourself, or let's put it this way, if you have unconditional love for yourself first, then if you have unconditional love for someone, then it means, or it should mean, that you have unconditional love for yourself. So when you have unconditional love for yourself, you know what boundaries to put up. You know where to say, no, this is not in loving of myself, so I cannot partake or I cannot participate in this behavior. I will not participate in this behavior. So it teaches you how to unconditionally set boundaries so that you may not get caught up in demented, or I don't know if demented is the right word, but in impure manifestations of love. Because there are a lot of things in this reality where love is warped, where the idea of love is warped, and it is our job to kind of like connect with the simple purity of love that God has for us by us being here and having this experience at this moment through this experience, right? We have all these things that we're constantly experiencing, and we're constantly needing to put our space in a place of love, but we're constantly being asked to be compassionate, to put ourselves in other people's shoes. But at the same time, you can be compassionate, but you also have to be compassionate for yourself. If you can't be compassionate for yourself, you can't truly be compassionate for someone else. And when you're compassionate for yourself, again, you're able to set boundaries. You're able to say no when something's not working for you. You're able to take responsibility for your actions. You're able to see when you're wrong, and it takes you out of that ego space, and it empowers you to be your best self. It empowers you to take, again, the word responsibility, because that is so important in this time. Because sometimes we feel like when we love someone, or when we are in relationships and partnerships, or we say, I have a brotherly love for you, you feel responsible for that person. Like, I've heard somebody have this twisted idea, who is in the spiritual community, talk about love, and they're like, I read when people say I love you on comments, or I love you in these videos, and I'm like, do you really love me? Are you going to risk your life for me? Like, what kind of crazy nonsense is that? Like, for me to show that I love you and I care about you means that I have to risk my life for you. That is the equation of what love is. Like, you risk your life for your child, but it's possible that you may not risk your life for a complete stranger. And it's also possible that you love that person and you want the best for that person. Who knows at that moment what you're willing to do? And it's unfair to put these chains on people and say, like, you can only love me this way, you can only love me that way, you can only show me you love me by risking X, Y, and Z. That is complete and utter BS, and don't ever let anybody put you in that situation. And just because you care about somebody does not mean you have to sacrifice yourself. Like, Jesus sacrificed himself, for the Bible, because he wanted us to know what it was like to have purity of love, to know what it was like to purify ourselves, for the people who believe the stories of the Bible. And since I haven't read the Bible in a really long time, please don't take my word. Read it for yourself, for those of you who are interested in that. I can't, I'm not saying that Jesus loved us so unconditionally that he sacrificed himself for us because he loved us unconditionally. That's like an unfair judgment to make. I would say that Jesus loved himself unconditionally enough to say that if you are in a space that you need to understand pure love, then you're willing to do something on this level, right? You're willing to make a certain level of sacrifice, but the sacrifice doesn't equate to the amount of love that Jesus felt. That was his journey to be in that space, so we can recognize pure love. That is his journey to do that. It does not mean that we all become martyrs. It does not mean that we all sacrifice ourselves for others. What it does mean is that we look at people and we understand them. We have empathy for them, and we try to figure out where they're coming from and respect their level of consciousness. But we at the same time can't force somebody to come to our level of consciousness. We can only give them information that will lead them to a level of consciousness where they can experience pure love, where they can experience unconditional love, or agape, if I'm pronouncing it correct, which is brotherly love. I don't know if it's Latin or Greek. It might be. I'm not sure. Yeah, it might be Greek. But you know what I'm saying? Like, those are the kind of things that we empower ourselves with when we understand what these things mean, and when we get away from the warped versions of themselves. Like, if you love me, you kill for me. If you love me, you sacrifice for me. If you love me, you'll put up with my nonsense. If you love me, you prove it to me by doing something that goes against your moral compass. Like, those are warped versions of love, and this is about breaking that pattern, breaking those belief systems, and understanding what love means for you, and purifying, clarifying, and bringing a sense of purity and innocence to it. Like, children don't love someone because they care for them, or I think children just naturally, I don't have children, but I would assume, even if I put myself in my child's eyes, I assume that I love people because I enjoyed being around them. It wasn't what they could give me in life. It wasn't about sacrifice. Like I loved my dad, but I didn't know how much he sacrificed for me to have the life that he provided for us. Like it never occurred to me. I just loved him because he was my dad. He was someone that took care of me, that was around me. And I appreciated that. And it wasn't until I was older that I really appreciated that. And it doesn't have to be blood. Like anyone who shows another person a level of love and caring will automatically reciprocate that, and bring it into a sense of innocence and purity, rather than being it warped and wrong in some instances, right? And so when we're empowered and understand that love doesn't have to be something demented, doesn't have to be something that is used as a blackmail to determine how much someone loves you, how much you love someone, how much you're willing to put up with, then we can really talk about that unconditional love, that love that you have for yourself, where again you're willing to say no, set boundaries, walk away from a situation that no longer serves you, walk away from partnerships that no longer serve you, before you kill an animal needlessly, or think about, like I can go really into details about this, but like before you produce animals for your convenience, before you you have the right to do all these things, but when you come from that space and you understand there's a level of consciousness to everything, or there's a level of love that we share because we're on this planet together, you hold back from hurting people or from taking advantage of situations or people who probably are in weaker positions than you are. And that includes like animals and stuff like that, right? You don't need to overconsume anything. You just know that there is enough. Like it doesn't become a thing of like where you have to choose and decide that, if you loved animals, you wouldn't eat them. Like it becomes like all these things become warped really fast because people have different perspectives. And I'm not saying that your perspective is warped if you choose not to eat animals. I'm just saying coming to that conclusion can be warped, can be messed up when we're saying that if you love X, then you shouldn't do Y. Like it becomes, love is being able to set those boundaries, being able to know when something doesn't feel right, when something's not right for you, and being able to walk away from it and say, for example, if you are in a relationship that you're not happy, but somebody said this was your soulmate, do you walk away? It brings up those kinds of conversations. And if you love yourself unconditionally, you're going to do what's best for yourself. If you let's say you like to eat animals, you like to eat meat, and some people don't. Like if you decide, hey, I eat animals but I don't overconsume, I'm okay with that, right? And somebody says, well, if you loved animals you wouldn't eat anything, right? Any animal. Like you being able to have that purity in love, that understanding of the purification of love means unconditional love. You can come back and say, what, I choose to eat an animal, but I also choose not to overconsume and take advantage of animals and just feel like I'm over them and I can do whatever I want to an animal. I'm not going to get into it, but those are just those kind of things that you discuss and have conversations about. And these are just examples, and I hope I'm not taking you guys off topic by bringing up these examples. And by empowering yourself, you open up another way of really changing your dynamic, your relationships, and what you're willing to stand up for and what you're willing to say no to. Like you say no to someone who puts you down for doing this. You say no to someone who tries to invade your space with their own perspective. So setting those boundaries are really important. And the one thing that I think is something that needs to be released as we discover what unconditional love is, the lack of patience in the process. We expect things to happen overnight. We expect people to come to our vibration and understanding at the same time we do it. But everybody has their own journey. Everybody has a specific road or vibration or flow that they're traveling on. Even though like we have established rules, like we don't do we have rules so we don't do messed up things to each other. We don't take advantage of each other. We don't there's laws and things that we follow here, and I'm not just talking about like the laws between human beings, but I'm talking about scientific laws, all these different things that are rules for us to live in it. But those rules will probably be overturned at some point, and somebody will discover something new that makes those rules, when it comes to the scientific community, like overchange. When it comes to the laws that we use, maybe we'll evolve in such a space that when we're truly honest with ourselves, we may not need some of those rules and regulations that we set for ourselves so we can live together. Like I often hear people talk about all these different levels of consciousness that are happening, and I'm like, half of us can't even be honest with each other. Like we can't even have an honest dialogue about how we're feeling. Like we constantly are attempting to manipulate each other in different ways. So until we can come to that space where we're truly unconditionally loving each other, there's no way that you can have telepathic, like I'm going off on like esoteric or non-mundane things, but I just hear like people, oh, well, I can't wait to be a telepath. Are you serious? Are you really ready to hear the deep truth of what people think about you? Like, are you really, if you can't speak the words, if you can't talk and have a conversation where we are like listening to each other on a space of unconditional love, then you're not ready to be a telepath. Like the human consciousness is not ready to evolve to that space. Like if we can't like stop killing people because they disagree with us, we're not at that level. So that is why it's so important to work on your stuff, to like get that sense of purity, to purify your belief system that are no longer relevant. So it's a work in progress. And love is a really beautiful thing. And it brings about such understanding between each other. It can help us live in a way that is open and honest, but we have to be ready to be open and honest with ourselves before we can make that transition. And like I said before, we're all trying to reach a certain level of purity. We're all trying to live a certain level of purification through healing work that we do, through being open to understanding others, to owning our responsibilities, to being able to have honest and deep dialogues with each other. And I'm sorry, but I don't sense that society is still able to do that. Like, I don't think we're at the place where we can be honest and forthcoming with each other without somebody taking it personally and being hurt, without somebody like, again, doing something harmful to themselves because somebody doesn't like them or somebody says something that they think is degrading. I just don't think we're there yet, and I think we have so much work to do. Just look around right now, the level of chaos or the level of your experience with like the general public is an indication where the collective is. You may be at that space, right, where you're like, I'm ready to speak my truth. And I've heard some people say there is no truth such as your truth. And I think, and these are like the intellectuals that say things like that because they're only thinking about the logical aspects of things. But they break down these things in order to like prove a point, and they neglect to see that if I am having a perspective, right, and I'm experiencing something, and the way I'm experiencing it based on A, my life experience, B, my perspective of the situation, it is in a way my truth, what I'm telling you, what happened. This is not about facts, disputing facts. Like, there are certain facts that can be overturned because new facts come into, new theories come into play. So the facts are here for the moment, right? And we're talking about facts regarding like rules and things that we've already established. But when it comes to spirituality or the metaphysics of things, there are things such as your truth. There are things such as your perspective. And if you want to demean it to say your opinion to someone, go ahead. You can do that because it makes you feel better. But it's still like your truth. You know what I'm saying? So don't let anybody tell you that your truth is irrelevant. But at the same time, you can't determine your truth based on, like, your truth can't be outside of facts, right? If there are facts about a situation, you have to take those into account. Your truth is more of like, this is what I've experienced in my life. I want to know if other people have experienced them too. And then if you can get a group of people who say, yeah, I've experienced the same thing, then it can become a fact. But your truth is your perspective. And I think there's a lot of things that we have to like come together and play with, and understanding meanings and critical thinking in the spiritual, like metaphysical, new age, whatever is going on with this stuff, to kind of figure out what's the level playing field of finding the balance between the critical mind and the feeling and intuitive aspects of our existence. And love, I think, in a long way that I've said this, and I'm sorry. I went on a tangent and I talked about a lot of different things, so I hope you were able to keep up. But going back to topic, the thing that brings all of this together is LOVE. Love. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter what's going on. Love is the center. Love is where things get balanced. Your mind thinks something, you feel something. Love is what tells you, is this something that's good for society? Is this something that's good for you? Is it only benefiting you? Not even good. Who does it benefit? Is it just benefiting you? Is it benefiting you and others? Or is it benefiting the collective? And you have to make that decision. And it is important to know, or it is important to understand where love plays in that. And you should not allow anybody to manipulate you with regards to love, because it is something that is used all the time to manipulate people and to make them feel a certain way about things, to downplay their things that they may feel are not justified. And so love is so important. So figure out what that means. Understand what love means for you in your life, how it has manifested in your life, how you've learned about it, what you've learned about it, and how you determine if you are in a space where you can love unconditionally. And if you're not, that's okay. How do you get to that place? This is what I think this message is saying. You first look at how to purify your experience of love, your definition of love. And once you get that sense of purity, once you get that sense of clarity, because purity doesn't mean, like, always mean innocence. It means clarity. It can mean clarity. It can mean having a clear thought process, having clear emotions, having a clear sense about something, where there is no fog, where there is no illusion or delusion, and you're just like really clear. And that brings a sense of empowerment, where you can take actions that allow you to get to a place where you do have love that is unconditional, where you can experience that. But the caveat to this is don't rush the process. Take your time. And if you are in a relationship, take your time to kind of figure these things out. If you are someone who's looking for a relationship, take your time to figure things out. There's no need to rush through this process. Learn as much as you can about yourself. Through your interaction with yourself, you can determine the level of love you're willing to give to someone else. And the level of love you give to yourself, don't mistake that with narcissism. Don't mistake that with feeling yourself too hard. And I think sometimes people get those mixed up. Like, if I love myself, then I take myself to the spa. I do this for myself. I do that for myself. And I have beautiful things. And I, always love banging. And I'm always got my makeup. I always got my nice suit on if you're a man. I always got my nice shoes on. I'm always clean cut. I'm always an image of perfection. That doesn't necessarily mean you love yourself, boo. Sorry. It doesn't mean any of that. So, again, full throttle back to this message. Okay, so in this conversation, what did we learn about love with regards to inner peace and security? That unconditional love is where it's at. Unconditional love is where we're trying to rise. And how do we get there? We understand where we need to purify love. Like when you do a cleanse, you purify your organs, you purify your blood system. How do you purify your relationships with love? What you've learned about love? What do you need to let go of? What do you need to cleanse to get to a space of clarity about love? And that clarity is going to help you to empower yourself to make decisions about love that are not just based on, an exchange of something, but is really just unconditional love that you have for your fellow human being, that you have for yourself first. And when you have that for yourself, you can have it for your fellow human being. You can have it for the creatures that inhabit this planet with you. So, you're less likely to kill a bug and say, you know what? Shoot, little bug, you can't be here right now. You're less likely to be scared and fearful of things that are on the unknown, but you take a moment to be like, hey, this may not be something that I'm into right now, but okay, I acknowledge your existence. Now, bye, little buggy, I'll talk to you later. I know I'm being silly, but those are some of the spaces that you have to be in. And the biggest message to this is it's patience. It takes patience. It's going to take time for you to recognize these things about yourself, to go through that purification process, to go through that space where you see the purity and unconditional love, and where you can make decisions that help you to be a better human being or to be a better person and still care about yourself enough to do what's right for you. All right, I hope this message was helpful to you. I hope it was coherent, because I know I used a lot of examples and I got off in a bunch of tangents and whatnot. So I hope it was okay, but if it wasn't and you have questions, let me know in the comment section. Talk to me. I am excited to read your comments. I get excited to conversate with you, the internet friends, the internet collective. And if you think this message is relevant when we're talking about and having conversations about what's going on in the world, how we can be better versions of ourselves, right? Love is one of them, understanding all that. If you think this is helpful, subscribe to the channel. If you think it might help someone, share the content. And if you want to hear more from me, do the notification bell and you will be notified when I post something. And another point I want to make is when you do all these things, it helps the YouTube algorithm let other people know I'm relevant and I have something of relevance to say that will help society. So I want to help society. That's why I'm here. That is my mission as far as me trying to understand my purpose or going through the process of understanding a purpose. You don't, all these things are like up in the air, but we want to strive for something, right? I want to have value in the world, and I think this is one of the ways to do it. And it's also the cheapest way for you to help me out is by doing these things, because it doesn't cost you anything. You just have to push a button and share and let people know and talk about it. That's all. And if you want to support me some more, you can always go to my website. At the end of this video, I will be putting pictures of my jewelry, and you can support me that way, or you can connect with me and actually book a session. Whatever you decide, the first option is going to cost you less, but the other options may cost you a little bit more. The reward at the end, I hope, is worth it, and you gain your full value from my interaction with you or your interaction with me. However you want to put it, I will talk to you again. Love you so much.